getting the cutoff. It's just now getting into cutoff season, so the tan will come.
I normally never wear cutoffs ever. I don't think I've worn a cutoff in 20 years or more. But we are live. Uh, welcome and good afternoon. My name is Danny McAtee. This is my friend, co-host, colleague, CT Duel, and this is the Forge Men's Group, where a couple of times a week we get together and talk about topics we feel that are relevant to men. And we look forward to hearing from you today. CT, how are you?
I'm doing great, brother. Like I said, I just did a little breath work before this in proper men's group fashion. Start with some breath work. We could start this with breath work, but it'd probably be boring to just watch us sit here and breathe. But anyways, doing all right, man. How are you?
I'm good. I've had a pretty productive but relaxing day. Today was like we had a really bad storm last night. So today the last 2 nights we had like monsoon level rains because now it's a rainy season. And so this morning at the beach, I went to the gym. I got out of the gym. I went to the beach, and so all the places where the drainage comes out were all blown out to have little channels down to the ocean. And it looked a lot different. And it was sunny and warm, breezy. It's really beautiful.
What is a relaxing and productive day? Because that sounds like you fucking nailed the sweet spot, right? Where it's not so much just hyper productivity that you're all fucked up and stressed, but it's not too chill. What does that combination look like for you?
I mean, that's a great question. I believe two things can exist at once. And for me, what productive and also really relaxing looks like is getting up, taking my dogs out, no particular time, come back, make some coffee. Don't rush, don't pound it as I'm walking out the door. Don't dump it into a traveler to run to the bus or the train. Sit there and drink it, have a bowl of cereal, whatever, have a smoothie, make your way over to the gym, work out really hard. Start a little bit late. We finished a little bit late. I went, sat down by the water, got a coffee. So it looks like doing things without having to be on some artificial schedule or like constantly feeling like I'm rushing, I'm late, I got to be here at a certain time. I'm like, yeah, 10 minutes. I sound like a Mexican.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
10 minutes
happening.
early, 10 minutes late. But that's what that looks like. Then I came back and I folded laundry and I took my dogs out again and I did some stuff at the house. I went to an antique store. I bought a copper pot. You know what I mean? Like I've got some stuff done.
You had time
And
for you,
yeah, I wasn't like rushing around or in any sort of uh, I had no sort of urgency just moving from place to place.
right? Yeah, that's a nice flow state, man. Time for yourself, getting things done, but not. Yeah, I like it, man. Happy to hear it.
So, a topic that has come up, which I may be slightly avoiding, the topic came up that one of our viewers asked us if we talk about grief. And I think that we probably haven't, or we've talked about it very, in passing or superficially. So today the topic is when men grieve. This is a topic I think that I am probably an expert on. I don't feel like I'm an expert on very much, but I have certainly lived, dealt with, worked in, been surrounded by grief for a lot of my life. And I don't say that because I'm like, oh God. To me, it is no longer like the Grim Reaper or something dark or necessarily malevolent, but yet another in a wide range of emotions that have something to teach us when we're able to sit with it and not drink it away, pretend it's not happening, be strong for mommy, as you were mentioning earlier, or just acknowledge that holy shit, this person, this thing, this animal was precious to me and important to me, and now it's gone, and that hurts, right? And so I'm curious to talk about this. We have an hour, and I would love to hear what's your 10,000 foot view on grief.
It's a great place to start, man. That's kind of where I was going, right? What is grief? Um, and I think you nailed it by saying it is something that was precious to us that we no longer have. And notice that doesn't mean just death, outright death.
Mhm.
You know, the person who asked us about this topic actually is going through a case where he's basically watching his parent die, losing a parent to dementia, right? And I've been through that with grandparents as well. And so you're kind of grieving that, having that person, having their mind, right? Being able to talk to them. You're grieving having those things, right? Even though they haven't died. Or even, I think we can extend it further to relationships, right? Breakups, divorce. These are losses, things that we had, we no longer do. And so, anyways, I would just define grief as anything that you had that you no longer have, and that shitty feeling that comes with it. That is grief.
Mm. Yeah, thanks for that. I would agree with that. I would agree with that 10,000-foot view. And I completely agree that it does not have to be, grief does not have to be a response to a physical death. Frankly, the most intense grief I've ever felt was a loss of a living relationship, right? Because I think that I understand death pretty well. For the people who are watching, I worked in public health, emergency medicine. I was a paramedic in a number of settings for a long time. And seeing the way in which people die, the speed with which they die, the response of the people around them when they're dying or have died is mostly logical, I think. It mostly makes sense. It still sucks. But there's a kind of like, well, the person had heart failure, and this is the natural conclusion to that. Whereas two people, a breakup, for instance, a divorce, the severing of a friendship, the severing of a relationship, feels like this actually didn't have to happen, right? This isn't actually the natural progression of things necessarily. And so for me, some of the worst grief I've ever felt had nothing to do with physical death at all. We haven't even touched on the death of an identity, retiring early from the fire department, for instance, which I think for men is a very different. Grieving the identity of a professional identity, I think for men is particularly difficult, which I'd be happy to get into. But
That's. Did I cut you off early?
it's
I
about the
did.
flow.
I did.
It's about the flow. I was just about to hydrate. Go ahead.
Smooth mac and tea. So, man, I was just gonna agree with you, man, on the identity. I think that's a big thing. I think as we wade further into grief, right? When we first think about grief, death, of course, comes to mind. But now we're seeing, right? No, it's the loss of a relationship. It's the loss of self, like you mentioned, parts of self, wrapping ourselves in our professional identity being one example. I certainly struggle with that, being a whole career changer myself, right? I'm an engineer. I'm an engineer. That's what I do. I'm an engineer. And then the death of that identity to be able to move into something else. Um, Grieving even versions of ourselves, right? That we either once were or that we feel we should be by now. It's a big one. Like, I thought by my age, I would already have XYZ life, right? So grieving, I think we carry grief on that as well, right? So
But say more. But hold on, say more about that. I think we could carry grief on that as well. Why?
I think there is a hurt internally that comes with not being where you want to be. Like, let's say I thought by 30 I would be married, kids, and have the career. Oh, we got comments. Comments are coming in this
Love
time.
it.
Nice. Yeah,
Eric
let's
Hodson, Clammy, jump on, bro. Oh my God, Clammy, jump on.
come on. Come
Grief,
on.
Eric. Sorry to cut you off. This took me by surprise. What an incredible individual to talk about this topic. My God. Grief equals the extreme discontent during transition from one's known reality into an unknown new reality. The refusal to accept the new reality. Amazing definition, Eric Hodson. Dr. Eric
Yeah, and that aids me in my explanation, right? The discontent during transition from one's known reality into an unknown new reality, the refusal to accept the new reality, right? I thought I was going to be 30 with a house in the suburbs and some kids and a wife and blah, blah, blah. I am not that. So this is that discontent, right? The refusal to accept the new reality.
Hmm.
Thank you. Thank you for that definition. Great definition.
Yeah, thank you for that, Eric. Clammy, if you're available, I would love to have you join us. Incredible individual with a lot of perspective. I learned a lot from him. We met in Haiti. It's another person that we met doing work in Haiti, or we met as we were going to Haiti and worked together in Haiti. So we actually met just before we got to Haiti.
Dude, we got to get a live that's like story time. I think people here, certainly myself included, people here hate. We met in Haiti and go, whoa, let's go there. Whoa, like probably some interesting
Yeah.
stories there.
Speaking about grief is that there is something very special about so Clammy's on LinkedIn. Clammy, I'm gonna go on to LinkedIn and post this link for you. I'm gonna send the link to your instant message on LinkedIn. Eric Hodson. There's something that's very different about grief when it is shared and what it is witnessed, right? And this is part of, I think, what men have moved away from that we need to move back to is support in grieving, right? Being available to grieve with each other, for each other, or support each other as one is grieving. And again, what men often do, bottle of Jameson's right in the middle of the table. No words, pass around shot glasses, and you have to pound a few before you can even say anything. And then, then there can be a catharsis sometimes.
Yeah.
Healthy? Probably not. I mean, has it ever hurt anyone to tip a 40 here and there? No, but I think that as a substitute for actual grieving, alcohol is not the jam.
Right. It kind of acts as a ladder to emotions though, right? A ladder to access. I can't access my emotions unless I take a few swigs of that Jameson. Certainly that's how I was at one point.
Right. And I think the hope is, to get rid of inhibitions.
Right.
What about grief has been difficult for you, either on your own or when being witnessed?
Good question. For me, I've shared a bit of this before with you, but for me, I think the biggest effects of grief come when I suppress it, right? I think just the avoidance of that discomfort, of just that gut-wrenching feeling of grief, feeling it and experiencing it. I think avoiding that is we got guests.
Clammy
What's up,
on
Ed?
deck.
Hello, dear friends. I'm going to park here just a minute for you.
Yeah, hands at 2 and 10.
All in.
Appreciate that. Appreciate the safety first. Yeah, just to finish that thought. Yeah, the worst pain for me comes when I just avoid it entirely. Like cause more destruction in avoiding pain that I could have just sat with in the first place. How many times have you done that?
Avoidance. What happens when you avoid grief?
Stack it up. Just pile that shit up, man. Pile that shit up until like a damn avalanche, it just comes rushing down. Avoid it for months, drink it away,
Mhm.
chase women, drugs, smoke, whatever. I'm talking mostly about my past life, until it all just it becomes too much. Your body just hits a breaking point. And it's like, hey, whether that's in the form of an injury, getting sick, just being overwhelmed by emotions. For me, that's kind of how it's manifested. Like the body's just like, hey, look, we got way too much shit piled up. We need to feel this.
Mhm. Thank you for that. Eric, let us know when you're stationary and you can talk, so I can give you a little intro.
Yeah, I'm only about 10 seconds away.
Awesome.
I am very
Cue the countdown.
honored, honestly, for the chance to even hang with you guys.
It's great to see you. It's been a
Yeah,
while.
I'm very,
It's
very
definitely
honored
been
to
a
be a
while.
part of this. I am very excited. Far too long, but good things happen in time, which is important to remember when you're talking about grief.
I would like to hear more
Good
about
things
that.
happen with time.
Yeah, good things happen with time. I would agree, and I would love to hear your thoughts on that. So, Eric, I call Eric Clammy because that was our call sign when we were in Haiti for him. Clam sandwich. CT and I have been working together, and we formed a men's group called The Forge, where we talk about, we were getting together and talking openly about it, and we concluded one group, and we're soon starting another group of men that we get together in a closed forum, not public, to get all these things out on the table and support each other and move through things together. And so that's the context of what we're doing today. So welcome. Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Yeah.
I've respected for a long time. Who are you, Eric Hodson?
I'm a regular Joe. I became familiar with grief when my mom died of cancer when I was 12. That experience got me into church because it was the best way to rebel against my dad, because he was the opposite of church. Went to school to be a youth pastor, but pivoted to biology because of a lot of reasons, but it also included wanting to make a practical difference in someone's reality now, and instead of being overly concerned with their reality later. But then graduated pre-med and opted to go to nursing school instead of med school, and spent the last 13 years working in critical care, including open heart recovery, helicopters, managed an ER, PACU, emergency rooms. And I'm currently the STEMI and stroke coordinator at a small hospital here in my hometown, where I'm waiting for the birth of my third child and first son in 6 weeks.
Oh my God. Congratulations. Wow.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So that's the quick summary. I own a business. I went to film school. I ride motorcycles. Just a really diverse sort of background, but really have appreciated the trying to navigate the complexity of the human experience and the way that tragedy has a way of revealing that in a way that's far more visceral and far more real, I suppose, than some other things. And that's been a big part of my life. I managed a blog for a while called The Blunt Side of the Needle, a provider's perspective on the health and human condition. And have been navigating through these kinds of things for most of my life, trying to, heal my own wounds in that same way. So
Thank you for that.
So that's me. That's my 60-second theater right there.
Thank you so much. Well, there's a lot. You've just said a lot. And what I heard through that is, yes, accomplishment, yes, service to others, but then also like, wow, those are environments where there's a tremendous amount of grief, often. And so I wonder, your grief journey started out with your mom succumbing to cancer when you were 12. Can you tell us a little bit about what grief was for you then, and how do you relate to it now?
So at the time, I was a mama's boy, so it was sort of my whole world falling apart. I remember, it's just like your body is its own thing. So I'm having these physical responses, crying, uncontrollably, and being unable to really participate, even if I wanted to. Like, I physiologically hadn't been able to physiologically process the experience, so it was still something that had to be embodied as well as understood cognitively. And then, 6 months later, I'm hanging out with a friend, and his mom brought him some chewing gum and a new T-shirt when they stopped by Walmart, and he was like, "Oh, mom, this is not what I want." And I'd like punched him in the side of the face, and I was like, "You can't talk to your mom like that, man. You have a mom. What are you doing?" People later would say, Eric, what are you sad about? It was like, oh, you know, that thing that happened 10 months ago, like it still happened, like it's a real thing. So at first it was something that never seemed to get better. Um, and then what it did is it took me out of the game. And what I mean by that is it's not that I couldn't play, it was more like I stopped being played. Like life and this competitive, I'm 12, so we'll also remember that. But this whole thing about trying to be in the race, I was taken out of the race and I started watching what the race was about. And that was a 3 or 5 year period of just kind of being sidelined, not a lot of friends, not a lot of involvement, and just watching people. And I became acutely aware of some of the just kind of built-in lies in the way that societies work, and the way that people work, and the way that the world works, and became very, very committed to not aligning myself with those things. Just making sure that if I was going to do something, it was going to matter. It was going to be material. It was going to do something more than just edify my own ego. And then watching my mom's funeral, listening to people talk about how great she was, it occurred to me like I should have a funeral like that. I should make sure that I do something that ends well. And so that developed a heart of service, which has then sort of been my driving force. Now, and I'd say right about the 10-year mark, to be honest, I would say confidently that my mom's death was the best thing that happened to me. And it's because that I say that because I would never want suffering, but it's true that suffering is what creates growth, that it's struggle that builds strength, that everything that I am, that that is good. Something like the best parts of me are rooted in that soil.
Mhm.
Or from those ashes came the brightest parts of me and how I see the world and what I'm capable of. And so, would I, if given the choice, would I sacrifice her to become me? Like, obviously not. But that reality gave me faith in a way, gave me some degree of hope, some kind of, even though this is horrific, it isn't the end. And maybe continuing to see the new beginning is worth staying in the game, getting back in the game, re-engage, and try to be a part of that.
It's very powerful, Eric. Thank you for that. How has that foundation, or has that foundation shifted or changed as you worked in austere medical environments for a bunch of years?
Um, One thing that has been neat is after, I think it's like similar to what I see from people in military and post boot camp environments, people who come back from that. When you have an extreme experience, other people's experience isn't so horrible. So, for example, when I lost my mom, that was bad. So, when my friends lost their goldfish, I was confident and comfortable enough to talk about them with their experience. Now that I have navigated the journey of grief, when I'm watching someone say goodbye to their child, I'm not afraid because I know that this is horrible. So let's do this together. I'm not, and it also gave me, medicine in particular, gave me an avenue to practice grief management over and over and over and over
Mhm.
again because we get to watch people have the worst day of their life every day. Um, and there's a drain to that. There's a reason why I'm not in it. 15 years later, I'm trying to move away from that particular experience and engage my services in a different way. Um, but being able to look at something really tough and be able to walk confidently into the fire uh, is a kind of superpower. I think that people don't really appreciate, that at going through this, recognizing as you move from your known world to your new world, as you reconcile your own disappointment and lost dreams and failed expectations and having to completely restructure the why. Like when I got married, who dances with me? When my wife has never met my mom. There's a way to create all of the holes, but there's also a way to reinforce all of the benefit, the structure, the good, to like decide whether this is going to be a bad thing or a good thing or it's a thing. It doesn't have to be categorically positive or negative. And so for me, having that superpower when things get tough, I get called, was because I've been through tough things. And I love being able to, when someone says, like, I have a horrible problem, and it's like, well, even if you die, I know what to do. And that's a really, really neat opportunity to be calm in others' chaos and to be a source of stability when people need it. In those austere environments, I do want to share a quick story about how, particularly in the grief of losing somebody, I've been able to watch people through their grief, through the experience of their tragedy, say really mean things to people who are dying. You have to make it to Tommy's graduation. We can't do this without you. And you're not necessarily meaning to levy that much guilt onto someone who can't change their situation, but they're trying to process and trying to identify for themselves. I'm not sure that I can go on without you. You know, they're more talking about themselves, I think. But I found it interesting that in times of when it's tough, it's really hard to be kind. It's really hard to do something that's productive and helpful. And so in those environments, being able to help segregate the management of the family's feelings of suffering the loss and how it is to be of service to the person who's actually dying and try to allow them to pass with some degree of grace and humility and a sense of confidence that it's going to be okay. And that is like in the world of entropy, things are always getting worse. Politics, it seems like we're always running into excuses why things are getting worse. I would love to reinforce a very, very core truth that things will get better. And better means different. Better means that you are stronger and able to handle it. Better means that new opportunities to move you in new directions, not stuck in the past, not trapped in this cage that you built for yourself. When I was first married, my wife moved to Minnesota and I stayed in California. So we were separated across the country for about 4 years, and I saw her for about 6 weekends a year. And it became a cycle where I love you, and that's why I miss you. And because I miss you, I hurt. My hurt is the measure of how much I love you. Because if I didn't love you, I wouldn't hurt. And so my pain for my mom and for my wife at the time was this way to anchor myself to the reality of what was valuable. Like, it meant something. You can tell because I'm still carrying that albatross around my shoulder. Or my neck, I'm still feeling the pain. How does one make it so that love doesn't hurt? How does one make it so that we value what was and still function in the new? And for me, that was the accepting that my loss of my mom was a net benefit, that I like the life I have, and I thank her for the impact she had for me. Choosing for my wife that love should not hurt. And so I celebrate our separation. I celebrate our distance because we're both accomplishing major life goals, and that's going to be okay. So the reframe, the ability to decide that this doesn't have to be so horrible. It actually is this feeling of terror and shame, of fear, of expectations, of value. I mean, your kind of whole world falls apart. Grief is when the floor falls out from under you. You don't even know what you're standing on anymore. But when you start to find footing, it doesn't mean that your old footing was wrong. It might just mean that you're in new footing, and allowing yourself to move to a new normal, giving yourself permission to grow, I think is one of the first and most important steps to moving through the grief process. How do we stop feeling the pain? How do we not make the pain the measure of the truth that we care, or the measure of the truth of what it was? How can we make it actually the superpower nuclear bomb inside of us that allows us to do things that others can't, that allows us to push through things that others can't, that gives us the strength and the will and determination to push harder and to go further than other people, because they have no idea what's at loss or what's at stake. They have no idea what they're capable of. So that's kind of what so that's what I think about it now. That's how I think about grief now.
It's beautiful. And so that's what happened. That is incredible, Eric. Thank you. What came up for me as you were describing how you show up in medicine is providing safety in chaos. Right. What I believe I heard you saying was, it's your container. My container is big enough to hold this with you, not for you, but with you. I'm here with you through this. I'm not afraid of this because of the point of reference. It also, it's interesting to me that, and you and I have spoken about the loss of your mom before, your mom's passing, but it's interesting to me that the first significant loss for you was like my opinion, the opinion of many that work in thanatology and grief loss, is that the loss of a mother is its own category and more intense in every way than any other type of loss, except possibly a child. So like mother and child are the two most intense losses that humans can feel. And for me, it's interesting that was your first, right? And so your first information about grief came from, the apex loss. What comes
Go
up for
big
you
or
when
go
I say
home.
that?
Well, what's nice, and I think that it's worth the biggest benefit of that is that we all have our own journey, and everyone's journey is the worst for them. And so whatever each person's going through, that's their worst. And it might not be on a rank scale as horrific as watching your friends get tortured by the Taliban or something, but it certainly is bad for you. So how do we say that it's bad? So let's get in it. I loved your comment previously, CT, about how when you avoid it, it gets worse. And I think that remembering that we do pay interest, there's a compound interest of avoiding things, which is why every single hero's journey is that they confront the dragon. They step into tragedy. They walk into danger. They're supposed to visit what's happening. And I think that remembering that that's the reason why that's such a serious story for all of human history is that that's what especially men, we could say that is our calling. We face danger, and most of the time that danger is on the inside. We have far more demons inside of us than we do to fight outside. It's just easier to poke a real dragon than it is to admit that I'm a little bit insecure.
Thank you for that. CT, thoughts, questions,
Man,
comments? You just laid down a lot of info.
he's dropping bombs back to back. I'm loving it, man. Beautiful answer. I don't know if we just lost
Yeah, I
Eric.
do.
No, we're
I
good.
do also have to sort of suddenly apologize, which is super cruel. But I have to pick up my kid for swim all of a sudden. This is horrible. It's like the worst 20-minute
Water
drop-in ever.
Listen,
Yes.
your life is unpredictable, and I'm just glad that you were able to come and spend a few minutes. It's amazing to see you. I'm so happy for you. You're going to have a son and your third baby. And Tara,
Crazy times, man. Crazy times.
I'm just overjoyed for you and your success. Stroke
Yeah.
and MI coordinator, huh? Oh, interesting.
Yeah, our tiny little hospital became a STEMI receiving center. So I'm the guy that does all the stuff. It's crazy. It's way cool. Well, I wish you guys the very best. Again, let's connect again in the future. I would love to help in any way I can. This is really important work.
Thank you so much for being here, and we're going to continue to talk about this after you're off camera.
Yes, thank you so
guys.
much.
Take care, Clemmy.
Whoa, that guy's impressive.
Yeah, it's interesting that, when I'm sitting like, who can I tell about this? Who can I invite to this? And then Eric shows up, because Eric and I have been having these conversations. Like, we were in this, middle of nowhere in Port-au-Prince in 2010, having conversations like this. And he's someone I would definitely value in this group. This is the type of men that I would like to work with.
Absolutely, man. I can tell in the 5 minutes of kind of meeting him and hearing him talk, he's one of those people you probably having conversations in Haiti or wherever, and you're like, this needs to be on a podcast. Like I was blown away, man. He was dropping some really good gems. Really interesting person.
Fascinating person, good person, and he's lived through a lot of stuff and has a fresh and and uplifting perspective. I don't know that I was 100% ready for how uplifting it was when I was in Haiti. You know, it was in a very different place at that time. But one of the things that I'm most grateful for doing the work that I did was having people like Eric around um, when something happens at work and if you're deployed internationally, there's no number you can call. You can't go talk to human resources. There's no EAP, right? There's no app that you can go and check in and see how you're feeling. You have each other, and that's it. And you have each other when the situation is slow enough that you can debrief with each other. And so we were the first place we worked together was at an Adventist hospital in the outskirts of Port-au-Prince, a very rough area called Carrefour. And we would work at the hospital and do clinics and work in the stuff that we were doing. And then in the evening, we would go up on the roof and like, because it was an Adventist hospital, there's no beer allowed, no alcohol allowed, but we would like sneak out to the neighborhood. And I would go alone to the store, which you're not supposed to do outside the walls of the hospital, buy some beers, sneak them back up to the roof. And we would like have a little, debriefing time up on the roof. And I'm gonna look for some pictures of that time. But what I'm getting at is I am very grateful for the times that we had, because oftentimes we are who supports us best, right? This is why I think this group is so important. Yes, there are specialists. Yes, there are all kinds of shrinks. Yes, there are coaches, and they're all valuable. But sometimes we just need the support of each other, right? That can go very far when it's leveraged properly. And so working in those environments, for me, what made the real difference was having little conversations with people like Eric and being able to debrief with each other and being like, is anyone's feeling this? I'm just feeling this to this call, and we can relate in an unedited way to each other. Because some of the stuff in Haiti was just like, you just couldn't, you couldn't even describe some of the weird, perverse scenarios and different types of ways of people suffering that just in the West we don't often see. Certainly not in the United States very much, if at all. People eaten by rats, you know what I mean? Like we just don't see that too much, even in the urban city. So I'm very grateful for that, and I'm very, very grateful he popped in, and I hope he comes back.
I certainly do.
Yeah,
is that why?
My
bad, man.
Go ahead.
Is that why you weren't like the level of suffering that you saw? Is that why you weren't always at that time receptive to Eric's optimism or positive view?
No, not at all. I think that had to do with my upbringing, right? And that just had to do with how little processing I had done in general over the course of, since I was a little kid, right? I don't think it had anything to do with, if anything, the stuff that I saw in medicine opened me up more, right? Because often you're talking about the savings account of your grief, right? You're talking about avoidance. You're talking about waiting until later, saving it, closing it off, sequestering it. You're talking about pushing it off, deal with this later. I can't do this now. So distance, avoid, distract. And what happens is often sometimes at work, something would happen and I would just have this overwhelming emotional response. And I realized that, yeah, while this is sad, I don't know any of these people. It's sad, but it's giving me the vehicle to offload some of my own grief that I've been carrying for a long time. Right?
Yes.
And because grief does not expire. Grief, like trauma, does not expire. You cannot wait it out. It does not dissolve away. You won't forget you have it, right? Sooner or later, it comes back. And as evidence of this, I'll give you many examples of people who I was with as they were dying in their last moments, bringing up something that happened 40 years ago, 50, 60 years ago, This is one of the reasons I believe that when people are dying and they have visioning and their loved ones and dead relatives all come to them, I believe that unrequited grief has a role to play in that. Right? often people at the very end of their lives have told me, I wish I would have grieved my wife.
Mm.
Now I'm going to see her, and what's she going to say to me? Right. So, deathbed regrets to me are very telling, because we carry grief forever if you want to. Now, sometimes I've heard people say they're afraid to move through and process grief because they don't want distance and they don't want to forget their loved one. As Eric was talking about the distance between him and his wife when she was in Minnesota and he was in California, it felt like the only way it was legitimate, his love was legitimized by the pain of missing her.
Mm.
Right. And so many people use unrequited grief as proof that they still love someone that's not physically here anymore. I think that that's, I think that that's, I don't believe that to be true. I believe the opposite to be true. Is that I can grieve someone fully and no longer have to actively grieve them, and their memory doesn't have to fade away. It can become more present and lighter. I think I think about my mom every day. I still grieve her from time to time because grief, isn't a one and done. But what I'm saying is that I've grieved her so thoroughly that when I think of her, it's pleasant. Or I can think of some
Yeah.
crazy shit that she said, and not be burdened by it. Right. So I don't feel like the fact that I'm not crying every time I see a picture of her doesn't mean I miss her less or love her less, or that she was less important to me today than she was when she was alive.
Mm. Yeah, that's powerful, man. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that extends to living relationships as well, right? With former partners. We eventually arrive to that point if we process, feel it, do the work, right? Like you might go from thinking about an ex and getting sad, missing it, whatever, to like place of gratitude.
Mm.
Think about that person. It's like, oh man, I know it didn't work, but I appreciate that time. And it's just you're kind of in a place of acceptance, right?
Kind
And
of in a
yeah,
place of acceptance.
you're kind of in a place of acceptance.
Why?
Stage of grief. Stage of grief. Um, yeah, I think I don't fully understand it, and I'll admit that. I don't fully understand how it works, but I have learned and experienced that when well, first off, suppressing it and avoiding it, that shit don't work.
Yeah.
That shit don't work to make it go away. And then on the flip side, feeling it, grieving, right? Actually grieving, feeling it, crying, expressing that emotion, releasing that emotion. It helps me move into a place of acceptance. It helps me to see the loss as just this sad thing that happened, but it's not really controlling me, right? It's like trauma. This thing that happened a long time ago that was really shitty, but it happened a long time ago, right? And as we process our trauma, we can kind of just accept, okay, yeah, that happened. That sucked, but I'm okay now.
Yeah.
Same thing with grief in my experience. Process it, feel it, and then now it's just kind of this thing that sucked and it happened, and occasionally it does still kind of feel bad, but it's not controlling us, right? We're not getting eaten alive by it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. There's a scene in The Last Samurai, you and I have talked about this offline, where Tom Cruise plays this Westerner who becomes adopted by the samurai and sort of absorbs into the lifestyle and just disappears into being a samurai. And and he's sort of the apprentice of the greatest samurai. And over time, many years, gains his trust, becomes accepted, and eventually goes into battle with these samurai. And at the end, his master is killed, and he goes before the Japanese emperor. And it's the last scene in the movie, and he's kneeling before the emperor, who is in disbelief that someone this talented could have passed away and this legend is no longer here. And here's this white guy who people have accepted as a samurai, but he's not even Japanese. And the emperor looks down at the character that Tom Cruise plays, and he says, "Tell me how he died." And Tom Cruise, because he's bowing, he looks up at the emperor and he says, "I will tell you how he lived." And that to me is a very good summary and a very apt summary of how I now relate to grief. Right. And how I now relate to grief has to do with the topic we talked about in a recent live where we were talking about sitting in it versus sitting with it. Right. Sitting in it is, oh my God, she's gone. I'm never going to get back. Oh, that's terrible. That's a part of grief. It's a natural part of grief to move through that. But the other part is what I've just mentioned about my mom. She's gone, never getting her back. This is irreversible. And I can talk about when she told the clerk at 7-Eleven, "What do you want me to do? Squirt nickels out my ass? Like, well, I don't have any change. I just told you." You know, I can appreciate how she was in life, and this is part of my homage to her, who she was when she was on Earth. Right? And so, to me, that scene, I think of it often, where the emperor is like, "Tell me how he died," and Tom Cruise looked up and he says, "I will tell you how he lived."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, what a scene. And the message, right, that comes with it. Squirting nickels out my ass. That's a fucking line right there, man.
We always used to go to, my mom would be like, give us $2 because I think a pack of cigarettes is like $1.69 or $1.89 or something. So with $2 bills, it was enough to go get cigarettes and bring back change. And so she was getting gas in the car and she made me go in to buy cigarettes. And this Indian dude was like, I need change. I need change. I went and he said, he can't do it. He doesn't have any change. She was like, what? Hold on a second. She like drugged me back in there and she was like, why can't I get this? And he was like, I need change. I need change. She was like, what do you want me to do? Squirt a roll of nickels out my ass? I don't have, you're supposed to have change.
Yo.
Yeah, Susan was good for delivering lines like that.
Bars. Bars. Yeah, man. Yeah, it's true, right? Place of acceptance is I appreciate how they lived. I appreciate what I had. I know I can't get it back, but it was just beautiful, you know?
Yeah,
And
I
I think
talked
it's
to a lot of
normal to
veterans
be
who embrace this mentality. And they're like, the only way to do honor to my friend so and so is by living my life. They would not want me to be in a bar room drinking that they're gone. They're gone. No, I honor them by living, not by being paralyzed by my grief.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. I wish I wanted to ask Eric kind of how he deals with grief now, right? When he experiences it. And he kind of was answering that when he was talking, how he reframes it, right? He kind of like he did with his wife, right? Reframing that distance as, oh no, this is great. We're accomplishing things for our lives, our goals. That's kind of a reframe, what you just mentioned. That's kind of one of those reframes. I feel sad. I want to go to the bar room, drink this pain away, but actually the person that I'm grieving wouldn't even want me to be doing that. And I'm doing myself and them a disservice by doing that. That's a powerful reframe, man.
Yeah, it's a very powerful reframe. If we were in a group, I would have pressured him to make it about himself, not how he carries the grief of patients or patient families. But it was a very profound insight.
Oh yeah.
And this is so much of what happens. I mean, imagine running a STEMI. A STEMI is it's called ST elevation myocardial infarction. It's a heart attack, basically. We go in the cath lab and they run stuff up your groin and put in a stent and open up your arteries of your heart. And this is how they save you from a heart attack. And it requires a lot of coordination as the person's coming in the ambulance or the helicopter to the hospital. Same thing with a stroke. Evaluating what their symptoms look like so you can start preparing for their treatment before they even walk in the door. And so, a lot of times life-saving intervention, you get them in time, the person, and a lot of times not, right? And so in a high acuity environment like that, you deal with death a lot. You deal with death. And he's like, I can't remember. I mean, I thought I just heard him say he was a nurse for 15 years, but I thought he'd already been in nursing before Haiti. The earthquake was in 2010, so I'm not sure, but he's been in medicine for a long time. But very powerful reframe on that. We have 5 minutes left today. I have to respect the time because I have another appointment after this. But I'd like to ask you, what would you tell men who wonder how they can grieve? Should they grieve? Are they a pussy if they grieve?
Yeah, man. I think that's the age-old question we ask ourselves as men. Am I a pussy if... Probably not. Probably not. I feel like it's the general answer to that question if you're asking. I think men should absolutely grieve. I think grieving is, like Eric said, right? Sometimes the hardest battle, the hardest thing to face, the hardest thing to go fight is the internal, right? I think being able to feel it and grieve it and process it is a stronger move than fighting, like physical fighting, drinking, smoking, whatever it is. So I think men absolutely should grieve. Like I said before, the avoidance of grief and feelings in general are what get me into trouble. And I always realize, oh shit, I could have just felt that for 3 days or even 3 months, whatever it is, right? Yeah, scary thing, but that's my advice to men. What about you?
I mean, I don't know that I have advice for men because everyone grieves differently, and everyone's grief is, there's no manual what's right and what's wrong. What's right is what works for each person. But what I would say is have great respect for anything you're going to do that could change how you're feeling while in grief. You got to have some beers, okay. Have some, not 20. Right? You're gonna have a little something to drink, and everyone's having a cocktail in honor of the departed. That's great. Have a little drink, but 1 or 2. Right? Not a handle of Jack Daniels. And so I would say that my advice would be, what is the feeling beneath the feeling? And work on that. And just sit with it. You don't have to get deep into it, but sit with it. I need to drink because of this hurts too much. Okay. Why does it hurt this much? Well, because my last interaction with her was an argument, and I said, I never want to see you again. I wish you were dead. And now she is. And I said that, and I can't take it back. Okay, we can work on that. Because if you drink tonight and forget about it, you remember it tomorrow, and you remember it tomorrow, and the next day, and you remember it into your 90s. Unless you sit down and metabolize it now. So whatever the case is, I think the feeling, what is the feeling beneath the feeling? And other than that, lean on people. Humans are not meant to grieve alone. Right? It's part of the reason that we all bring platters of lasagna and ziti and big, food over to each other so that we can comfort them. But also, we don't bring like single serving sandwiches so you can go take it out and close yourself in your room. It's meant so that we can be in community together. Because when people are grieving, they should not be isolated. So I would advise people to resist the urge to isolate when you're grieving. Right? We are meant to grieve in community.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are, man. Powerful. Thank you for that.
Thank you for that. A little bit of a heavy topic today, but heavy topics become lighter when we shine light on them and speak about them openly. And grief is a big one for men. This is CT Duel, my friend CT Duel and colleague and co-host. My name is Danny McAtee. We have a group called The Forge. It's a group for men where we talk about topics like this and many others. We talk about topics like this in a place that's quiet, private, not on the air, closed, where we all know each other and are confidential with each other's story, and we move through things together. So if this sounds like something that interests you, there's a link here. You can reach out to myself here on Instagram and CT on Instagram at Danny McAtee at CT Dool, DOOL, and shoot either one of us a message. We would love to have you join the conversation. We'll be live again on Saturday, and thank you for joining us today.